Hi, friends. I'm so glad to be with you today to talk to you about a model I love, IFS, and I'm glad to be teaching again. And I wanted to make this introduction for us as we enter into the land of IFS. So, what is IFS therapy? Well, IFS therapy stands for Internal Family Systems and was founded by a psychotherapist named Richard Schwartz. It originally was discovered as a model for psychological, emotional, and relational therapy, but it turned out to be much more than that. Internal Family Systems offers a framework for everyone to understand the inner workings of the human psyche. Then it offers a practical set of skills for people to work inside that system toward greater peace and harmony. Coincidentally, Mr. Schwartz discovered that the more peace and harmony inside a person, their problems spontaneously changed on the outside for the better. Fourth, the early IFS pioneers and colleagues of Mr. Schwartz discovered that when people used IFS on a regular basis, they had spontaneous spiritual experiences that improved the quality of their life. In short, IFS is a psycho-spiritual theory with a practical set of relational skills that can be used independently, therapeutically, and relationally to make humaning more enjoyable. In IFS theory, there is one interrelated system called the internal family system. It has two separate interrelated systems, the restorative side called self and the protective side called parts. The concept of self can be hard to understand because of so many other ways that we use the word self, and because the concept is not clearly linked to any existing schemas in our culture. However, the concept of self is so critical to an IFS treatment approach, it needs to be a priority in our understanding and practice. I have continued to wrestle with the concept of self until I've come to some more clarity and recently attached it to a concept we're more familiar with. This is a new idea I call the regenerative mind, but it links several existing ideas. Here it is. We have 11 scientifically defined biological systems that sustain, protect, and restore their respective function. They are the digestive, musculoskeletal, immune, reproductive, circulatory, respiratory, integumentary, excretory, lymphatic, skeletal, endocrine, and nervous systems. The regenerative mind is similar to all of these biological systems because it works to sustain, protect, and restore its respective function. For example, the regenerative mind is similar to the circulatory system because of the network of interconnected veins, vessels, and arteries that are organized but can reorganize to adapt to a threat such as a clot. It is also similar to the protective side by how the circulatory system will contain foreign threatening plaque by shielding it with a harder substance of calcium. It is similar to the nervous system because it has two separate arms, sympathetic and parasympathetic. In the nervous system, one side restores and one protects against environmental threats. It's also similar to the digestive system because there are protective parts like gut bacteria that neutralize and contain environmental threats. It's similar to the integumentary skin system in how it uses layers of protection over what is vulnerable. It's also similar here in how it reinforces its protection with stronger layers such as scar tissue if the wound is really deep. There are so many ways the regenerative mind is similar to other biological systems that it's worth considering it as the 12th systematic function of human beings. But there are also many ways that it is unique and different from these systems. Let's enter into IFS theory from the perspective of the regenerative mind and get to know more about the restorative side called self. In IFS, the regenerative mind is comprised of the restorative side, called self with a capital S, and the protective side, which are ego states called parts. Self is described as a consistent, inherent state of consciousness that is available to everyone separate from their protective behaviors. The protectors are shifting states of consciousness that selectively react to perceived environmental threats. In IFS trauma therapy, the central figure for safety and healing is the restorative side. Self is monitored by 8 observable conscious attributes: calmness, creativity, clarity, confidence, curiosity, connectedness, compassion, and courage. And a deeper expression of self includes attributes called the 5 Ps: playfulness, perspective, persistence, patience, and presence. Further, Locke Kelly is a psychotherapist and author of Effortless Mindfulness, and he contributes to the IFS theory of self from his Western and Eastern educational experiences. He calls self awake awareness and says that awake awareness is universal, can be spontaneously, naturally felt and experienced. It is so simple we don't notice it, so valuable we don't believe it's possible, so obvious it's recognizable, so available it's easily forgotten. He says that most people have experienced it in their life many times, but they didn't have language to describe it or a culture to support it. The restorative side is the latest discovery to the psychological scientific community, but it has been known for a long time in spiritual traditions. The concept of self is similar to the Buddha mind, true self, and imago Dei. While self is not attached to any particular religion like parts are, it gives us a capacity for spirituality and is a conduit for conscious spiritual experiences. Self is the source of repair for disintegrated, fragmented ego states because it is what the parts of us are looking for elsewhere. The restorative side is timeless, always here, in the now, but also aware of the past and the future without leaving the now. It can see, sense, hear, and observe and witness information from multiple sources without judgment or analysis. It is untethered but curious about societal norms, cultural rules, and individual caregivers. It is not an interrogator or investigator. It does not enable because it is not afraid or bound to the limitations of time and human acceptance. The restorative side is always here, always ready, and always attentive, but it's never domineering, harmful, or hopeless. In contrast, the protective side develops through our lifespan and becomes attached to external stimuli in order to decipher and engage with the environment. As a result, the parts collect burdens made of invasive and destructive ideology and identity-harming experiences. This causes the egos, the parts, to reorganize around the burdens to minimize their negative emotional impact while still allowing for social engagement. The restorative side is easier to recognize in children because they have fewer protective parts, mitigating fewer burdens. How does the restorative mind heal? Because of its nature to be compassionate and curious but unattached to the outside for survival, it provides a consistent state of calmness, trust, and security. When the restorative side does its regenerative process, it finds and connects to a radical part stuck in fight or flight mode. It then supplies more psychological medicine. While other biological systems provide blood, heat, oxygen, the self gives the struggling ego part more of the 8 C's. When the restorative side connects with the radical protective part, it pauses, it hangs out, gains trust, it witnesses the solidified story so that the information can be free to digest throughout the entire system. Consequently, the protective parts become more relaxed in protecting. This exposes the hidden burdens. When the parts, called exiles, that are holding burdens are directly exposed to the restorative side, they get updated, integrated, and released from their protective position. And the regenerative mind begins to reorganize from a protective fortress to an open field of human capacity. Is any of this resonating with you? You might be noticing your restorative mind. It is the you who is not trying to solve a problem, the you who knows without knowing where it knows from. It is the spark in your eyes, the flexibility in your thoughts, and the openness of your heart. It is the side of you worth knowing and building your life around, more so than the problem solving, pain avoiding, or overworking achieving side. In closing, how do we utilize the restorative side of the regenerative mind? The restorative side does not need to be taught any more than the skin needs to be taught how to close and repair itself. Because of how we're educated and stimulated, the relationship between the protective side and the restorative side is very fragile. Nevertheless, we can re-educate our protective side to look inside and notice, acknowledge, and trust the natural regeneration process. Then we can imagine life, communities, and countries who use their individual and collective regenerative process to lead and heal our psychological, emotional, and relational systems. I invite you to get more familiar with your regenerative mind through IFS and imagine how life might be different if you could heal while hurting, if you could recognize what is protecting you and what is supporting you. What if you could share the love that you have for the world from an inside place of abundance and well-being? What can you imagine?